Hi, welcome to episode 2 of It's All About Movement. Michelle, how have you been?
I've been well, thanks. A lot going on as always, but moving and going on, and can't wait to talk about more.
And you got training starting this weekend into the lasers.
Yeah, one of the things that I work with the lasers is the lasers actually stimulate movement. Most people use lasers for cellular regeneration, healing properties, those kind of cognitive objectives. But I work with it to improve movement, and through improved movement, it improves the touch. So it's going to be a really nice training, really to finesse your touch as well as learning to work with the lasers.
Yeah, great. And it's like the back catalogue of all the training that's available online to people now. Just makes it so great for parents coming into it. And I've had a few new families get in touch with me recently, and so like introduction to movement lesson and where they can start on. And I've actually had some really good queries and questions asked. One of them looked at or asked me about why there's a big difference in the milestone bands with movement lesson compared to our NHS milestones. So, say for example, the NHS crawling milestone, it has a much greater window than with movement lesson. Same with rolling over. The gaps the between the averages that people are looking for are a lot greater with the NHS milestone expectations compared to movement lesson, and the whole question was why.
Well, it's a big reason, and it comes also stems from the US, and they're in the same category. In 2004, and I have the papers to show, the US government saw that babies are becoming more delayed. And they could not explain why they're becoming more delayed. You and I see this all the time with our kiddos, that the babies are showing much more severity. Used to be they needed a little help with rolling over. Now they're not even approaching rolling over. And so in 2004, the government changed the standards, in a sense, dumbed down our babies and made a wider gap of what's going on. So the biggest misconception with all of that is that, first of all, it doesn't take into account the type of birth that you had, meaning NICU time or anything like that. You never see that in any of the standards. So that's really throws off parents. And then second of all, yes, they've gapped it out. So what's worse is, so the government, the NHS and the US government, are really showing developmentally delayed babies in their standards. And then you're coming in a little bit behind them. You're already developmentally delayed or possibly globally delayed. So I'm trying to go back to the original standards that we had. It's sort of like it used to be that a size 10 was really what they call a size 2 now. They're changing the way that we are approaching our lives, and we don't even know it. And in the US, it's even worse because they couldn't come up to a standard for crawling, so they just took out the milestone. So in the US, they're saying crawling's not a milestone. But the biggest concern that parents should have with all of this is the fact that by delaying these babies, guess what? It is much harder to get services, because in the US, you have to be 50% delayed or 25% delayed in 2 or more areas. Well, if they're taking out milestones or they're pushing them back, now your child, where they would have gotten help so much earlier, and that's what we really want to promote. We're just trying to promote movement. We're not trying to say that your child's special needs. We're not trying to say that your child's going to have developmental delays. We're not going there. We're trying to enhance movement, and that's why this podcast is all about movement.
And that's pretty much exactly what my response were when I was asked the question. But I figured that it's almost like the government are taking a bit of a laissez-faire approach to it. How often we must hear that families being told just sit and wait and see. I mean, I had an NHS physio bring his son in recently because he picked up on the fact that his son was delayed, and he'd asked colleagues for support and help because he didn't know how to help him. And they didn't know. They just said, "Oh, it'll be in his own time." But they didn't want to just sit and wait. So they brought him in, and we had a chat. And was halfway through the second morning, and we said something, and his wife said, "Oh, I know nobody can stand NHS physios," and we kind of like laughed, and I thought that was a bit strange. And then he looked at me and went, "Yeah, I'm an NHS physio," so like she's just having a dig at me, and I'm like, "Oh, really?" And he's just like, "Yeah, it's just good to get insight from somebody else who's actually looking to help, and he's seeing flaws in their own system." I kind of feel a lot though with that sit and wait, because so many parents just take a professional's advice, and that they just listen to them without questioning it at all. And you then get more parents sitting and waiting. Therefore, if a child is delayed and maybe late to hit a milestone, because they're doing nothing about it, it's going to become even longer before they reach that milestone. As a consequence, like you said, the gaps between, or the average is getting larger. We're going to have now a greater variance to it. And then consequently, with that variance, then we're going to affect the cognitive delay. So those people who are late hitting milestones, they're not having the brain isn't being mapped the same way, because it's not getting the movement, it's not getting the weight transfer. So that child's brain isn't making the same level of connections. Consequently, like, I mean, could this be a reason why we seem to be getting a much larger neurodiverse population? You know, because we're getting so many more delays with people getting the support and help that they need. And you know, people might say, oh, it's a little bit cynical. The way that I know, particularly in this country, the way that the NHS is funded at the minute is not acceptable. And is that another reason? Like, well, we can have a larger gap so that there's less parents seeking our help, because there's not enough physios. They can't give you the time and access. So, like you said, we delay it, and we say that suddenly, rather than having a 1 month window or 2 month window, we're going to have a 4 or 5 month window that someone can learn to roll in. Well, then that means that there's a greater delay on parents and accessing services that they might need. But and for me, I said to her, movement lessons is all about getting that early intervention. It's about empowering parents to go and get that help and support, and identifying what their child needs. And I think that is the main reason why the gap for milestones and what we're looking for in milestones is so much uh, narrower than so like the governments.
Well, the biggest problem is no one's evaluating the babies except for us. When they're doing the wait and see approach, okay, and that's the first question I asked, did they evaluate your child? No. So that's why we do the free Facebook Lives. We do all of those kind of things. We have the newborn movement assessment. We have plenty of tools, and we're actually going to come out with a big paper and presentation to show about, again, you really should have milestones every 4 weeks. When you start to have milestones every 6 weeks, you're starting to ask someone there. When you're starting to have milestones every 8 weeks, now you're coming to us. We don't want to be, and again, we're not the only professionals out there. Professionals don't want to be the last in. I would rather nudge a baby into healthy development than work on, that you're in a life of therapy. Autism is now like 1 in 29. And because it's a severe movement disorder, and even the severity of cerebral palsy, where again, that's where another thing people think, well, I didn't have birth trauma, so everything's going to be okay. You've got genetics, you could have had a stroke in utero. I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer, but things happen way beyond a new parent's knowledge. Even a seasoned parents, they're not thinking that way. I wasn't thinking that way. You weren't thinking that way, And so that's what's going on. And so this whole big thing. And then when you do get into services, then it's like your child's not even sitting up independently, let's say. And then they're like, oh, we're going to get your child to walk. And you're going, okay, great. We're going to go for walking. And again, now you've got a gap even on this side of helping the child. And that's why too, we're trying to show it's not just independent sitting, it's coming in midline, it's crossing midline. It's the first time your vision goes into convergence. These are things that happen all during that period. And so we have more ingredients to our spaghetti sauce than most people think it's just tomatoes and garlic, let's say. We have the seasoning. We're looking at the little nuances that happen throughout a baby's life. Like I just did a thing on toilet training, and how you know your child's gonna have issues is they can't blow raspberries at 4.5, 5 months. And because again, the same thing, you know what I mean? And that's why kids mimic that mouth noise when they're thinking of what's going on their behinds. And so, and because they're coordinated, that's what you need for the force to go to the bathroom and to control it. So, and people just don't think of what does a raspberry have to do with toilet training, but again, these are signs that parents could look for, just easy tips.
And I think that's it. It's finding those things that we can look for. A milestone to me is almost it's like a fitness test. It's not how you would train an athlete to get better. It's a test of where a child's at, and if we don't know where they're at and where they should be at and how they can compare to, how do we know what areas need that support? And I think that's something that's really important.
It is important. And that's too, if you don't know where your child's at, don't say they're there, because that's another big problem. The child might have fell off of a pillow once and the doctor goes, "Oh, is your baby rolling over?" "Oh, yes." Because a parent doesn't want to not brag about their baby, about their 15-year-old. "Oh, they don't pick up their laundry. They're always late. I can't get them up in the morning." But our babies, we don't talk like that. So the doctor hears, "Oh, this child's rolling over. They're right on track," when they never rolled over. They only sort of like fell off a pillow. And so that's where we're trying to present right now what a true milestone is. So people don't have this wide window of milestone presentation, and they want to brag about their child. And so the communication is off, because really your professional's there for medical, not for development. And parents think it's for both. I'm not saying professionals don't have concerns for development, they do, but really it's about fevers and cuts and boo-boos and vaccination. That's where their profession is on in the beginning stages of babies or development, whereas we want the development. So we're not thinking of the health, they're thinking the health. So it's just different language approach, different approach to development. And that's where we also have to narrow the gap.
And I know that I think it'd probably be good to put the milestone chart probably in the show notes or something for this, just so that all the listeners can, who do have concerns or just want to double check, that you can just go back in and have a quick look just to see where your child's at. And we're not saying just because there's a delay in one milestone that there's something majorly wrong, obviously, but it's a sign that there's probably some sort of glitch there that could do with a little bit of help. Now that might be half a dozen sessions, it might be more, it might be seek further help and assistance for tests, but you're better finding out and finding out earlier rather than later, which kind of leads me to another question. And well, something that I hear quite a bit from parents is the fact that they've been told by professionals, "Oh, well, if your child can't do this by the age of 5, then they'll never be able to do it." And I had again a new family get in touch recently, really panicking, saying that we're already halfway there to turning 3, and they're not doing X, Y, and Z, and what they're going to do. They need to make the most of this time, because if they don't do it by the age of 3, and I'm like, well, it's not the age of 3 per se. The age of 5 is that optimal window. But that's not to say that they're never going to be able to learn a skill beyond a certain age. Motor learning happens throughout a lifetime. Motor neurons are connected and created throughout our lifetime. It's why, like, an old lady can learn how to knit and sew once they've retired from whatever job they did previously. That they're learning a new skill. But a lot of parents get that factor, and I've had families that have been told, "Oh, well, actually, we're going to take the walker off your son because he's now beyond the age of 5, so he's never going to be able to walk independently. We'd rather the walker go to somebody else who's got more of a chance of being able to achieve it." And you're just like, could you, and like that, the family hearing that first of all, but secondly, like that understanding that if you've not achieved a milestone by a certain age, you're never going to be able to achieve it.
Well, not only that, but I still remember, because my son's hypotonic. And thank God he's got mobility because he's 6'3" now. But I remember at his 12th, he was 12 years old at the pulmonologist being evaluated, and she turned to me and she goes, "You know, he's not going to be walking when he's going to college because of his low tone." And I was like, "Do you know who you're talking to?" Like, over my dead body, if you think me, I'm gonna throw in the towel. My son is walking and he's gonna lose these skills. And then two, that do you know who you're talking to? Like, because I'm just that kind of a parent. I'm not saying I have a guarantee or the magic crystal ball, but my son is proudly going to college, and not only that, just got into the Phi Beta Kappa Honor Society, but and that's important too, because my son also, don't get upset, guys. This was a diagnosis back then because he's 21. It was 20, he's diagnosed mentally retarded at the age of 4. And the fact that he's going for 2.5 degrees going into his senior year at ASU, I think we've done pretty good. But
Just a bit, yeah.
yeah, but seriously, we have to stop that. But again, where's the evaluations going on? To be concerned at 3, there should be much more extensive not diagnosing, but evaluations of where the child's at, especially within vision, fine motor skills, gross motor skills, and what's the global that we have to work on. But really, we need these skills. But a lot of too, if the child's not walking, that's the towel breaker. They throw in the towel. If a child's not walking, and now we're looking just on life skills, it takes away a lot of cognitive approaches towards a child. And if the child is walking, they also walk away saying, "Well, got walking, yay!" You know what I mean? I'm like, well, what about reaching and climbing and stairs? Oh, you should just be grateful. Well, I am grateful. Sorry for taking long on my side. The human species, we are the longest to develop. We're not sexually active at 2 months of age, like many rodents are. They can be procreating by 6 months into their age. We really need attending to by parental or caregivers for years. We don't drive cars when we're 2. We can't even be president of the United States till we're 35. We really develop over a span of decades. And so, no, I'm not saying we need to wait and see approach on that way, but we really have to appreciate that we will continue, hopefully, to learn skills. And that's what I love about movement lesson for myself, being in a senior citizen now. And that's a hard pill to share, but I still want to be on the progressive end of movement versus the reactive end of movement.
Oh yeah, and I completely agree, and it's supported by the science as well. And maybe we could end up filling up show notes with different stuff here. But I've got another good research article that I'd probably like to share and put in the show notes for people to access as well. And it's by 2 researchers, Power and Schlager, and they talked about that. Yeah, we've got optimal windows for development where the most learning and the most neurons are likely to be created. It's up to that age 5, but we need to move away from them being critical windows to development, because we can learn beyond that. And the whole focus of movement lesson is looking at creating the feedback that the body needs through movement to develop those connections with the brain. And we need to move away from that. Oh, if you're not done it by 5, you'll never be able to do it. It's an outdated approach. The research suggests that it's wrong, and we can learn throughout our lifetime. It might take a little bit longer. It might take a little bit more time, but you can still get there. But again, going back to similar to what we said before, in terms of the milestones, if somebody just believes that, and how many parents get told, oh well, if you like you said, they throw the towel in. If you can't walk by the age of 5, that's it, you're never going to be able to walk, so that's it. We just put them in a piece of equipment, we'll stop accessing, we'll stop trying to stretch them, we'll stop trying to challenge them, we'll stop trying to enable them to acquire new skills and new movements. And again, is it cynical to think, is that because then there's less strain being put on the services, so that suddenly the services and the funding that the government have to provide is less because there's less families looking to access it, because you've got told it, they've just listened to it, and then consequently you've probably got a bigger number of a population who don't walk by that age and are never able to walk, but it's because they've just given in. You know, I always like to think of the Henry Ford quote of whether you believe you can or you can't, then you're right. You know,
Right.
it's
Or two, if you listen to a lot of your doctors, professionals, you know, like that woman who said, my son's not going to walk in college. That could have been a deal breaker for me. That could have been like,
Mhm.
why am I doing all this for? You know, he just became at 12, he became, or 13, he got his black belt in karate. You know what I mean? I just, you know, he was a life scout. Like, why was I then doing these things that I would be doing for my son anyway, despite him being severely compromised and special needs, however you want to look at it. I just, you know, again, it's sort of like when someone makes a comment to me, you know, let's say like, I'm heavy or something like that because I'm on the internet. You know, you have no right saying that. Yes, that's true. But at the same time, too, I'm trying to help people. And if that's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back by the fact that you felt that it was necessary, that I had no idea what I look like when I look in the mirror in the day. And that if that makes me go, oh, I can't do this anymore. What good does that do for somebody? And so we really have to look at where someone's at, where they need to be, and where they want to be. But we need to offer the services to do that.
It's the right mindset, and I know maybe the growth mindset's come under a little bit of criticism in research recently, but I find that having that ability to learn from where we're at, and right, well, we haven't achieved this date, we've not achieved this milestone by this point. Let's not give up on that. You know, like let's learn from that. Let's keep working, and it's using that yet is the key word. You know, okay, you're 6, you're not walking yet. You know, it's not that you're not walking ever, it's you're not walking yet. You know, don't just give up just because you've got to a certain date and time. And that's where again the support out there and the resources that are available online are so beneficial, because parents can access it and start to work on the child at home, and they can still, you know, I think of it in terms of my daughter, that if she learns to walk at 10 or 15 or 20, and then the same with Graham, you know, it's when they're 40 or 50 or they're at their retirement party, nobody's going to care really at what point they learn to walk. It's the fact that they did learn to walk because the parents didn't give up on them, and carried on pushing them and finding new ways to help them learn new movement skills.
Yeah, Graham's one of his latest milestones was he didn't learn to ride a bike till he was 9. You know, and it's a different image than you have working with your 3-year-old doing that, or 4-year-old riding their bikes when they're still in their spinning milestones. That happened between 2 to 5 years old. And but again, that's when we knew at least he would always have independence. Or a big milestone is now he's actually going to have his first own apartment senior year of college. I didn't think my son would ever live on his own. There were limitations that I had in my brain, but I will quote someone too that says, you know, like someone that I don't believe in it totally, because I think goals are really important, but they said I don't like to have goals because it limits myself and the person I'm working with. You know, so when someone comes to me too, like, will my child ever walk? In my mind, I'm going for Mount Everest. I'm not going to be satisfied with that, because when a child really does walk, they don't say, oh, I'm walking. I'm just going to walk for a while. Then they're starting to climb on the cabinets and then the couch. You know, they're already, a child is in so much more progressive features than we are mentally, really, as adults.
And I suppose this brings us on to sort of like another linked topic there, in terms of those children that actually skip milestones, and you come across it quite a bit, or you might see on the internet, like my child never crawled; he just went straight to walking. And you know, you kind of think, well, you know, oh, they're just so smart. And I'm like, well, actually, to me, again, that's showing some sort of glitches there. You know, every milestone is important for a reason.
Every milestone is important for a reason. one of the beauty of what we do is that, like, if I worked on you, you're a grown man, I don't necessarily need to make you crawl, but I put crawling into your system when I work on you. So there's ways of touching and moving a person in positions that still can bring out the milestone, even though they're past that. Some kids are just structurally not available, because of hip structures, let's say, or a scoliosis or arthrogryposis. There's other ways that they can't crawl because they're just not available to crawl. But by not crawling, you still again have to evaluate that person, because they might say too, oh, my child's fine. Oh, but they're dyslexic, or they've had a little bit of speech and so forth. So you still don't realize that how the reading and cutting scissors and maybe crafting and all those kind of skills that come out because of crawling. Usually if you don't crawl, you can't use scissors. Typically, I'm not saying again all the time, nothing's set in stone. But also too, what's going on? Did your child not crawl because maybe they have vision issues and you're not catching it yet? It might be something as simple as that, because a child's not going to crawl where they can't see, and if they have an astigmatism and it's hard for them to look up, they can do it much better here in standing than they can in crawling where they have to look up. So there's things that just need to be checked out, and make sure that the child's ready for the next stages. But I don't, I want development so your kids can decide whether or not they're going to, let's say, Harvard or the Olympics. I don't want them to say, I'm just so clumsy, I can't throw a ball. And it be, well, if they'd crawled a little bit better, then they could throw, kind of thing. Because I can tell you right now, if you're looking at highly successful people, they didn't miss a milestone. They didn't.
And like I'd probably go a little bit differently there as well, and say, well, if your child has skip crawling, and they think they're too advanced for it now because they're walking and jumping or whatever else. Actually, like let's play a game. Let's get down and be lions and tigers or whatever. Crawl around the room with them. Get down and move around. Let them feel it. And if you see glitches in them, you can look to help them. And I mean, I know crawling's so important anyway that I like to get my son down, my 4-year-old, and we'll crawl around the room with my daughter while she's still crawling, and it kind of supports that. And I know other families will do that as well. And if you think that my child's too smart and skip crawl and went straight to running, actually, he's probably then going to affect them academically at some point, like you said. So let's bring it back and put that crawling milestone in, just with a little movement play and make them get down and do those movements. If they never rolled over, let's get down and roll over. It's important that we go through those milestones.
Well, it's important too, because guess what, guys? Now we're getting into the stage of tablets and phones. So I'm going to ask everybody right now, when's the last time you saw a bunch of bikes outside someone's house knowing where all the kids were at? We're missing a lot of upper milestones due to too much. When my mom used to say you have to stay inside, to me, that was grounding. Now grounding is I'm going to make you go outside. The bicycles, the rolling around, the couch jumping, playing with just,
rolling down a hill.
Yeah, rolling down a hill. I had to teach my grandkids how to roll down a hill. They were like, Mama, you're crazy. I'm like, come on, everybody line up if you don't know what this is. Yeah, no, it's just really necessary. Climbing a tree, you know what I mean? Monkey bars. Monkey bars shouldn't be a part of therapy. They should be like, it's what you do. I remember back in where I grew up, there were the bars out. You see it much more in Europe, these fun parks. Ours are very much swings, slides, those kind of things. But you have more of that, like, I guess, like the parkour, like, beginner CrossFit, but where you have the bars and you can flip over, things like that, the inversion. We're not doing it. We're not doing it, and a lot of other skills like skiing and stuff could be very expensive, cost prohibitive to parents. So they don't do those kind of things where, you don't see badminton, tennis, all those kind of things. Skipping. Kids don't know how to skip today. We need to look at those.
And it's risky play, and the benefits associated with risky play and judgment and helping them become better decision makers because they've gone through that process. Actually, I've fallen down and hurt myself. Learning how to fall, like another good thing because they're a child. If you've never fallen down and suddenly you're a 20-year-old and you're tripping up and you're falling and you're injuring yourself, you need to go through those stages, and it does help with judgment and creativity, and being able to figure out what is too dangerous and what's not dangerous and what's possible. And it's really important. I'm pretty sure I saw something on Instagram recently that was saying about like the Canadian health service, or somebody said from research that they were looking at, that actually risky play was something that Canadian children were missing, and needed to try and promote more of it. And I just thought, yeah, but but it's not just Canada. The UK is certainly the same.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to run a company if you don't know how to fall down. Most people look at like they lose $1 and that's it. And I will throw in one more thing before we end, and I love your comments on this, guys. What happened to first, second, and third? I get it that it's nice to get a ribbon because you showed up, but there's nothing wrong with a little bit of healthy competition. Not on the downside where you have to, let's say, get hard on somebody because they only came in second, they only came in third, or they didn't place. But it is nice knowing that you've got something to shoot for. We use it in therapy practice, that those kind of goals of what to go for. And it's okay to have a bad day and learn how to deal with also a bad day, because a lot of kiddos don't know how to deal with a bad day because they're used to, I wouldn't say perfect, but everything going into that. And then all of a sudden, yeah, stuff happens. The car breaks down. There's a flat tire. Things happen. Maybe mom and dad don't have enough money for something like that. You're going to have to help. You're going to have to sell newspaper or things like that. That problem solving skills are all movement.
And I go back as well. It's mindset again, isn't it? It's the growth mindset. It's learning from that mistake, knowing how to process it. Like competing against yourself to be the best that you can be, competing against everyone else, and feeling what's that like. And okay, you might not, you might get beat, you might finish last actually. You might be disappointed, but you might run a personal best in that time, or you might have been pushed harder because you had other people to run against and compete against, and that then is going to hold them instead when they go for job interviews. But learning from, all right, you came second to that person in a job interview, you're really disappointed, but let's take a positive out of it. Let's find what was good about it. What did you do well? How did you push yourself? And overcoming that and learning from it so it don't get you down next time. And I think competition's important for that, and movement and related to competitions is key to that.
Yeah, and when when you get a job, your certificate is that you get a paycheck at the end of the week. But nobody's going to say, "Yeah, you were here at 9 o'clock. Good job." So like I said, but it's a wide range. Not to say that I mean, I like a good compliment as well as the next person does. These kind of things are important, but I want to compliment because I went above and beyond, not because I just showed up. And
Mm.
and again, they come into play. Like I said, it is nice to get a certificate of participation, especially, like I presented at Oxford, and it's framed, it's right at my front door. I was at Oxford, right? And again, that didn't happen until my 50s. I didn't do that when I was 15. Some people have, and it's wonderful, but some things take, again, a lot of, like, that was my 5-year plan or my 10-year plan. And these kind of processes, instant gratification for movement is wonderful, but at the same time too, milestones will start to gap or get wider when there's emotions involved, right? But the physical milestones really should be much more tight knit. So like I said, so for me to get in, like I'm presenting at Charles University, I had to do my abstracts. It's about like, and now I have to do my presentations. I want to do a paper because sometimes papers get published. So I have to sit there and parse out about almost a year of prep time of where I want to go just for that 18 minutes of presentation, right? And then I will get a letter to say that I was there, but also my abstract gets published. So there's goals involved, right? Those are goal-based things. Those are social emotional. A lot of movement goes into it because I've got to get there, I've got to fly there, I've got to create. But at the same time too, it's not a milestone. Milestones, again, to look at it, should be much tighter. So we can't take that thing of like, well, they're only a baby and they're not walking yet. No, there's many big steps that go into walking, just like there's many steps to go into doing a presentation. And that's what we have to start looking at more of the milestoners, or go, okay, milestone might be walking, but what are the steps involved? And that's where we need to break down a bit more for parents.
And I think that's so important as well. It's like this is something that you achieve for the first time in your 50s, you know. And again, it's just going back to reinforce that point we made earlier. You know, that's something new. That's not something. So, oh, if you've not done that by the age of 20, you're never going to do it.
Right.
You know, it's the same for adults as it is for kids. I've literally worked on somebody today who's had an operation on his wrist, had some metal work put in there to help stabilize it after he'd broken bones, and said, "Oh no, I need to do this because the doctor told me that any movements that I can't do after 6 months, I will never be able to do again."
So we're saying you can tell a brain.
Yeah, suddenly you start believing that, and you stop doing the work. You stop trying to help. You know, all right, it's going to again take a little bit longer. If it's not perhaps not done in that first 6 months, it's not going to come back as quickly. But you still got access to those movements in the long term memory. You've just got to find a way. And post injury, post operations, rehab, the brain regresses. You know, it goes back to a habit that's formed that's easier, and you need to create new networks and new neurons to go and find that again and access that information and get a stronger retrieval strength. It's not a case of just being told, oh well, if you've not done that within 6 weeks or 6 months following surgery, you're never going to be able to do it. Give up. And well, yeah, you're back to that Henry Ford. Well, you know, don't do it, then you won't be able to do
And
it.
then the doctor is right. And then
Yeah.
that's what people say. My doctor told me this would happen. It did happen. Good thing he's not telling you when you can die. So, but again, you have two hands. You know what I mean? And start to learn all that. So anyway, I would love to hear your comments. I'd love to know more, even suggestions of what we need to cover during our podcast. Leave your comments below, and or come to movementlesson.academy and Movement Lesson UK. Scott is there in the UK. I'm here in the US, and I'm Michelle Turner.
Thanks, Michelle. Enjoy the laser training this weekend. I'm down to London to work with some families for a long weekend intensive down there. So be busy, but hopefully see you all soon on the next episode.
Yep. Cheers.
And remember, it's all about movement.
It's all about movement. See you.